to the Let's Talk TriDelta podcast. I'm Mindy Tucker, TriDelta's interim CEO and your host for today's podcast. I am so excited to introduce you today to TriDelta Foundation Board Trustee, Gayle Jennings-O'Byrne. Gayle joined TriDelta at our Pennsylvania chapter, and she is a trailblazer of committing to empowering women. She is the CEO of Wocstar Capital, co-founder of the Wocstar Fund, which focuses on early stage investments in female innovators, particularly women of color tech entrepreneurs, whom she calls her Wockstars. And most recently, Wocstar Media, where she is an associate producer of the Broadway play Thoughts of a Colored Man. And she's also an investor in For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, which earned a Tony Award nomination.
Seven Tony.
Seven. Oh my gosh. Okay. Here's the list of some of her accolades, recognition, all much deserved, and really the tip of the iceberg. First of all, she's a TriDelta Woman of Achievement. She was named one of the 10 women changing the landscape of leadership by the New York Times in 2021. She is a top woman of influence in venture capital by Venture Capital Journal. That was in 2022. In 2024, she was named one of Business Insider's top Black venture capitalists. She's also a Forbes 50 over 50 honoree. And if that wasn't enough, she also received the U.S. Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award in 2022. All so well deserved, and you're so much more than impressive. There's just so much I can say about this woman. So I'm so excited we're going to get to talk to her today and learn more about what she's up to, which is a lot. Her companies, how she supports women. Also can't wait to ask her about her TriDelta experience. So Gayle, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. This is like the highlight of my, I don't know, week, day, month, you name it, but it's a highlight. I'm so excited to be here.
I love it. So I want to start with TriDelta and how you came about joining TriDelta at Penn.
Yeah, in some ways it was a happy, unexpected occurrence. I hail from a family, a Greek family, in that I have 5 uncles that are in fraternities. I have uh, 4 aunts and a mother who are AKAs, so they're all in historically Black organizations. And yet, when I got to Penn's campus, I was just in this exploratory, wanting to just spread my wings. And I had a roommate who was a little shy and wanted to not go to Rush alone. And so I said, I'm happy to go with you. And I think because I didn't come with expectations and I was just approaching with a really curious mind of wanting to just meet people and learn about other people and their experiences and their communities, that this beautiful thing happened where I was embraced by TriDelta, and TriDelta women were my jam. And I thought, yeah, I want to be part of that sisterhood, that community.
I love that. So you weren't even intentional. You weren't even going into it intending to find a place, but you did. What did TriDelta teach you?
Oh gosh, I learned so much from TriDelta that carries with me today. How I act, how I show up in relationships, how I show up for friends. But I think the first and probably the most sustaining thing that I learned was how to just express myself and not get caught up in trying to twist myself into what I thought people wanted me to be or expected of me to be. That I could be that kooky girl sitting on the couch after an evening out watching Saturday Night Live. And at that time, they had like a little parody that they would do about our sorority. And
Right. Yeah. That was my time too. I remember.
right. And so, I could be that kooky girl just sitting on the couch with a couple of sorority sisters laughing, at this parody, the skit, and, not take ourselves too seriously. And then it also taught me about sisterhood. I was an only child till I was 10. And so I didn't have sisters that I, shared lipstick with, or, well, I wouldn't share boys, but I didn't have a sister I could really talk about, boys with. Um, and so, or share clothes, things like that. And so
Yeah.
I learned what sisterhood looked like, and how to, how to ask for, friendship and sisterhood, and receive it in return. and and give it as well. And I
Yeah.
remember one time, this boy who shall not be named, Stephen, broke up with, I didn't say the last name. I'm not, I'm not going to get anyone in trouble. Had broken up with me on Valentine's Day. And he
On
called,
Valentine's Day.
yeah, or no, maybe the day before, maybe the day before. And he called to say that the
Steven.
Valentine's gift was still on its way. So it might have been Valentine's Day or the day before. But that it was still on its way. It was this big cookie from Mrs. Fields, this big chocolate chip cookie in the shape of a heart, and it said, I love you, or be my Valentine or something from Stephen. Um, no last name, no last name. And it arrived. And so of course I'm in tears and I'm just a mess on the floor. I was living in the house at the time, the Tridelt house. And so I'm a mess, crying on the floor. The big cookie arrives. A couple sorority sisters bring it up to my room. And we just sat and ate this cookie, and I cried and I vented, and tears turned to laughters. And it was just this moment of like, I get it. I get how powerful having sisters and girl friends that can just sit with you, even if we're not really talking. It wasn't, I don't think, I don't know that there was any like magic words of wisdom that were shared, but it was just, they were sitting with me and letting me have an ugly cry, a happy cry, crazy laugh, more chocolate chip cookie. Yeah.
That so many people that I get to talk to on the podcast talk about moments when Trideltas showed up for them. And I think in those moments you realize how special this thing is that we're all a part of. And sometimes when you need it most and expect it the least, here we all are holding each other up. So
That's right.
and I'm sure Stephen does not know what he missed out on. Let's just say that.
He doesn't. He doesn't. Poor
Well,
Steve.
I know, poor Stephen. Well, Tridelta knows how amazing you are. You are on our foundation board, and I'd love for
Thank
you
you.
to
Thank
talk
you for
a little
allowing me
bit.
to serve.
Yeah, no, we're just so lucky to have you. How did you get reconnected with Tridelta? I know it was sort of after you went out and built your career and then sort of came back in into this role. How did you get reconnected with Tridelta?
Yeah, so well, it's funny. I should say that connection can look different for different people.
Mhm.
So I wasn't connected with the larger organization or formal activities. But if I look at my life, I've had Tridelt in my life ever since
Yeah.
pledging since Rush. Um, I'm on a WhatsApp group with 4 or 5 Tridelts from Penn. And so one of those sisters, Leanne Hubner, um, she was involved with Tridelt and had put my name forward for Woman of Achievement. And when I got the call that I was being considered, and I had to really think about like, well, what does this mean? It's not enough to simply um, accept awards and then go off into the sunset with, this lovely award. But I thought if I'm going to accept this, then I need to recommit myself to the organization. And so I sat with that for a minute, and I didn't know what that would look like, but I had made a personal commitment to myself that I would do that. And so that was really the start of it. And so when the invitation came to get involved at the board level, it was easy to say yes. It was really easy to say yes.
You say that so effortlessly, but I don't think everybody looks at receiving awards that way. I think that's a really impactful way for you to look at recognition that's given to you and how and what do you give back. I think that's unique and valuable. And
Thanks. Thanks for saying that. I mean, I do believe that with all that's given to us, we have to think about how we can leverage that for good. And so awards are in that same category. If an award comes, can I use that as a moment to do more, do better, do good? Um, does it lift up something or someone or something?
yeah. So let's jump into this very successful and just so interesting career that you've had. Tell us about your path through Silicon Valley and New York.
Yeah, happy to. So I am really the product of a couple of trailblazers. My father and my mother grew up in the South, agriculture, agriculture South, and farming communities in which their parents were farmers, and um, they both, through education, went on to do fabulous things in their career and help, set me on this path. In particular, my mom was similar to the women you would have seen in the movie Hidden Figures. So those women in that movie
Mhm.
worked on the space shuttle at NASA, and they were using IBM mainframe computers and Fortran computer software. And my mom was doing similar, using the same computer and software, but she was helping design two very significant planes for the United States. One was the F-15 fighter plane that really helped with America's air superiority. We had a
Mhm.
lot of other military superiority, but that plane was a huge contributor for air in particular. And then she helped in the design of the DC-10, which is
Okay.
the grandfather or grandmother, as we like to think, of all the jumbo jets and big planes that we're all flying to get across the country and the world. And so that brought us to Silicon Valley. And so I grew up seeing women and men, diverse people, diverse cultures in STEM, in science, in technology. And so I didn't know any other path. My dad worked at a biochemical company, and she was in Silicon Valley and at tech companies. And so in my mind, that's what people did. And so no surprise when I graduated from Wharton and came home because I didn't get a job on Wall Street when I first tried out of undergrad. I too went to Silicon Valley, and it was a great time because um, the the companies were some not mature, but they weren't fledgling startups, and so there was this neat kind of space of new companies. There was still that startup feel, but there was still grown-ups in the room as well. And so I got to see a lot of and have a lot of great experiences. And then I finally figured that, you know what, it's time now after having some really great experiences there that I would get my MBA. And I went to University of Michigan. And I did so because I'd already gone Ivy League. I'd been on the West Coast. And I thought, you know what, where's another part of the world that I may not live in, but could have some great experiences? And so I decided the Midwest, and Michigan was a great school. And by the way, I turned down a full ride to the University of Texas at Austin.
Really?
Full ride, yeah. And someone had said to me, hey, if you truly believe you're going to be successful in the way you think you are, why the hell do you care about the student debt? Don't you think you're going to be able to pay that off? And I thought, hmm,
Hmm.
you're right. You're right. If I truly believe I'm going to be successful, don't let that hold me back.
Right.
Now, I don't have kids, but I don't know if I would say that to any of the people I mentor, the young people I
That's a big challenge question. Yeah.
That's a very big one. I might answer differently if asked today. But I answered it with walking away from that full scholarship, and I went to Michigan and carried that debt for a while. Had a debt-free party when I paid off when I made that last
Yeah.
debt or payment. Um, and that took me to Wall Street, and that started my career. And I started actually in Asia during the
Okay.
Asian currency crisis. So I was a poor student, and I was working in investment banking, and I never looked back, never looked back. But in all of that, there's been a lot of reinvention. So I started out as an investment banker doing mergers and acquisitions, and then I was an international lobbyist. And my last role um, um, was in global philanthropy, which I did for 10 years. And it was from there that I decided I was going to start my own business. So we could have another podcast about how to reinvent.
It's funny, we were just talking about this. I have another Tri Delta who I've been talking to who's now she and I have this conversation about how you kind of have these like at least three big reinventions in your life as a woman. You have this
I love
opportunity to
that.
yourself at least 3 times. So it's interesting to hear you talk about it because I think sometimes that scares us, but also look at what you've been able to do in the times that you've reinvented yourself. I mean, these are not small, you sort of downplay this, but these are not small companies you've worked for. Their names people know. Um, and and you've risen to, high levels in places that um women, and in particular women of color, probably have not been in these business arenas and had great success. So um I love that you weren't too scared to step out there and just do something different. Go to the University of Michigan and get your MBA and go back to New York and just do something different. So
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you for seeing that. And you're right. I mean, many of these, and I'm sure others have experienced this, but in many places, being the only woman, being the only, woman of color, being the only person of color, like it just happens over and over again. Um, so
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love your I love your ability to dream big and go after things. One of the things you've talked about is this concept of dual citizenship, and I think you've talked about now a couple of different places you've been and lived, and how valuable it is to see yourself and exist in these different communities and different places. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, I call it dual citizenship. And what I mean by that is this ability, and we all have it in some ways. I know for me, I use it, I pull out different passports depending a lot. Um, but it's this concept of sometimes having to show up differently depending on the room that you're in and the situation that you're in. And it can either be freeing, it can be a superpower, it can be the thing that propels you and helps you excel. I worry when people, um, I worry when people don't activate it in the positive and that they let it sort of crush them. And so what I mean by that is, okay, let's stop all the diplomatic talk and get real here. What I mean by that is how I show up in white dominated circles looks very different than maybe how I may show up when I'm just kikiing with my girlfriends out on a girls' trip or Friday night when I'm bitching about something. Um, and so, yeah, there's going to be times where I'm going to be one of one in a room. Um, and instead of letting it kind of crush me or chip away at my self-confidence, instead it's about this idea of embracing who I am and just knowing I'm going in and my passport looks different than your passport when we walk in. Um, and so that's what I mean by dual citizenship. And that too, I think I've learned from Tridelt, because when I joined Tridelt, I wasn't joining a historically Black sorority. And Tridelt wasn't the most diverse. It was very diverse, but it wasn't the most diverse room that I would, walk into on campus. But it was a room that taught me to be okay with being me and
Yeah.
like, having my passport looks different than yours. My life experiences look different than yours. My hairdresser looks different than yours, right? My size clothing and where I shop can look very different than where you shop and what sizes you wear. And it could be the same Levi's, or is it just width and length, but it look very different on the two of us.
I love how you're marrying the concept of knowing how to show up with a particular audience successfully, but also how to do so being yourself. That sort of like being able to sort of not blend in, but being able to sort of join in that conversation with your individualization present.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, you have to. Otherwise it's soul sucking and it just can drain you. Um, listen, I wear hats now and big earrings. I didn't do that my first few years on Wall Street. I probably didn't do it my first 10 years on Wall Street, right? It was navy suits, pearls, 1 inch little heels, like, and pantyhose. Do you remember pantyhose? Oh my
yes.
gosh. Um, so, you know, but
These days have no idea how good they have it.
yeah. So listen, I didn't pop out of the womb with fedoras and, you know, big
Right,
chunky earrings, but throughout all of that, throughout my whole journey, my career, you know, my professional, my personal, I've always been in search of or attuned to like the real me. Like, am I being my authentic self? But am I truly the me that is happy with me and loves me and is okay with me and is going to give grace to me? Um,
right.
and that's a journey, right? I don't want to make it sound like I wake up every day. I did hear once that one of the most freeing things that we could do as women is take the Supergirl pose, you know, like your hands on your hips, kind of Wonder Woman. They're like, you know, if you're going out to give a speech, if you're behind the curtain, just like give yourself that pose for a minute, and they're just like, it's just this freeing thing. Um, so
Yeah,
everyone try that. Everyone who's listening, try that and come back and tell me if it works for you. But you know, I don't wake up every day with the Supergirl pose. There's days where I crawl back in bed. There's days
sure.
where I don't want to go to that conference because I don't know anybody and it feels like, you know, the first day of school and heading into the cafeteria where you don't know anyone, you're not sure where to sit. But gosh, when you can get to a place where you love yourself and know yourself, um, you can show up real fabulous.
Well, that's a great entree to your fabulousness, which is Wocstar Capital, Wocstar Fund, Wocstar Media. Can you talk a little bit about this Wocstar concept, how all of this came about, and what these companies are doing?
Yeah, happy to. So I'd been on Wall Street about 2 years, 2 decades, 2 decades. Um, And towards the end, I had been diagnosed with cancer in my eye and my eyelid, and we just didn't know where it was and if it was going to impact my sight or any of that. So, I was scared shitless of dying. Um, I was mad at myself because I thought there were so many more things that I had on my to-do list, you know, my master life to-do list that I hadn't gotten done. And I made a pact with God. And I asked her, they, um, gosh, if I can get off this operating table and if I can have my sight, I don't want to be greedy, but if, you know, if I can keep my sight, I promise to really figure out my life purpose and live it. So I made that pact. They kept their end of the bargain. And so now it was up to me to keep my end. And I didn't know what it was, to be honest with you, like what my life purpose was going to be. And I got a call one day from a fabulous woman who was uh, double Ivy League, worked amazing companies in the city, and she was on her second um, company. She'd worked in corporate America, and now she was on her second entrepreneurial startup. And she was worried about making payroll. And I thought, my gosh, here's someone who's followed the American playbook, the American dream, the social construct, right? Like be a good girl, stay in school, get good grades, get a good job, da da da, right? All these things society tells us. And yet here, when she needed society, aka the financial markets, the investing venture capital market, to meet her halfway, crickets,
They weren't there.
crickets.
Yeah.
No one showed up. No one showed up. No one answered the phone. And so that was my aha moment. I thought the social contract for women is broken. It's friggin' broken.
Yeah.
And we talk so much. I'm in the rooms, right, with all the bros. We talk so much about the financial markets and, you know, how efficient they are. No, they're not efficient because they're missing some of the best investment opportunities out there. And so I thought, all right, damn it, let's go. Let's do this. And so I went to my husband and I said, hey, I went through, here's our balance sheet. It's like maybe this big, little. I was like, here's our balance sheet, here's our debt, here's our cash, here's our investments. I was like, I'm just going to take this much of it. And
Go over here.
Yeah, just a bit, just a bit. And I'm going to start supporting women entrepreneurs. That was it. That's all I had. I didn't have much more than that. And so what came from that is Wocstar Capital. And so we now, and what we do is we invest, we celebrate, and we storytell about women. And now the company is called Wocstar, which stands for Women of Color Stars. But that's not all we do, right? You can't be inclusive if you're still just focused on one segment, one demographic. But I wanted that in the title because I wanted it to be front and center, because I truly believe that if you have a woman of color, if you have a woman even at the table, everyone gets an invite and everyone will get fed.
Yeah.
Everyone will have a seat at the table and everyone will be given a plate and be fed. No one will go home hungry if a woman is at the party. And so that's what we do. We invest in women-led startups or women co-founded startups or women that are at great startups, right? So we have some male-founded companies, but again, we're female forward, so there's women. And then we celebrate and we train women through our academy, which is free. We'll make sure we get you information. I encourage all tried-outs who are either raising capital or who are wanting to learn how to tell their story differently, because there's so much social media out there, it's hard to break through the noise,
Right.
to sign up for the academy. It's an 8-week investment in yourself and doesn't cost you anything, at least not this year. uh,
So get in now.
Get in now, exactly, get in now. And then we have Wocstar Media that we recently started to tell the stories of amazing just people with the female lens.
I love, well, there's so much I love about this. The women,
There's a lot to unpack. I know. I'm
I
sorry.
know. But there's this sort of historic stereotype around women and money that we don't ask for it, whether you're a political candidate or a business owner or whatever. The stereotype is, I've heard it across the board. Women don't ask for money. Well, what is your secret sauce? How do you help women gain the confidence to be able to go out and ask for money for their business?
Yeah, I love that you asked that because it's really important. Um, it's really important because you're right. Asking for money is very unladylike. Most of us weren't raised talking about money at the dinner table, right? Like maybe our brothers, got to hear a little bit from dad about it.
Mhm.
Um, and as women, we didn't really have that conversation. Some of us are raised in single parent homes, and those single parents didn't know how to have that conversation with us, right? Regardless of a two-parent household. Those weren't conversations we traditionally had. And I remember even the first time I went out to raise capital for what's now our multi-million-dollar fund, um, someone just, and they weren't being malicious. They were just like, "Oh, this is so unladylike for you. What must that be like?" And I thought, I never thought it was unladylike till you told me it was unladylike.
Right.
But
Great.
I get it. I get it. Right. It's absolutely true. So one of the things, in the academy, we do a lot of talking about like the types of capital and how to run a capital campaign. But here's the little secret, and where we spend a bulk of our time is practicing how to ask. Is just practicing how to ask. So we have things where we talk about how much do you want to raise. And I always tell women, whatever the number is, double it. Just double it. And then go practice it in the mirror as you're brushing your teeth, as you're, blow drying your hair, as you're in the shower, whatever you're doing, just practice it. Practice 100 ways to ask for the money and get it to a point where it's just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
And even something so small as that is just practicing does so much for your confidence, because you've said it so many times, you don't have time for the wiggles and the nerves and the butterflies to come up, because you know how to ask it. You know how to ask it in the airport. You know how to ask it at a cocktail party. You know how to ask it over the phone in an actual investor meeting. But here's the other thing I'll say that we talk a lot about is we stop asking. Now, everything I said, yes, you want to practice it, you want to double the number, you want to figure out a couple of different ways to ask it. But here's the thing. The asking is actually an invitation. If framed as an invitation, people are more likely to RSVP. I had to learn this myself. I went out to, I can't even tell you how many investors. Hey, I'm raising this fund. It's called Wocstar Capital, Wocstar Fund. We're going to invest in women. It's going to be amazing. You're a tech investor. These are tech companies I'm investing in. I got 100 million no's. 100 different ways people had to say no. And here's the other thing. Most people on the other side of the table were men, right? The investors typically were men. And no one wants to be a jerk. No one wants to be, an asshole or, racist, right? No one wants to, be seen as sexist or racist, right? So they don't really want to confront women, right? And so what you get is a, hey, that's great. Stay in touch. Or, wow, do you know Susie? You should meet Susie. Because they don't want to just say, hey, you know what? Not for me. That's a shitty idea. I don't believe you can, triple my money, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to confront us. So in some ways, we don't even get a real no from people because they don't want to tell a woman no, right? So inviting, I had to think about it. And I thought, maybe I need to change how I quote unquote ask. Maybe I need to tell them what cool stuff I'm up to and the cool companies I see and that I'm going to invest in and invite them to join me. Like, I'm going to do this. I've even put my own money in. I'm already writing checks. Would you like to join me? And you know what? The power of an invitation is huge. It's more powerful than an ask.
That's I think there's a lot to that. People do like to be invited, but also you're putting yourself there first. Like, I'm willing to do this. I wouldn't come to you if I wasn't willing to do it. That probably gains or carries some weight with it.
That's right. Yeah.
You're willing
Yeah.
to step into it yourself.
Yeah. No, people want to see you have skin in the game for sure.
Yeah. I also feel like all of this work, there's the actual impact on those businesses and those women, but the magnified impact of more women getting funded, more women getting support. Going back to what you said at the beginning, the societal pact is sort of broken for women. Do you feel like this is changing that?
I mean, I hope so. That is the intent. And I think about that not at a large scale. I think about it just on a daily basis. Like, if everything I can do can be impactful and help the next person, the ripple effect of that is boundless.
Yeah.
So how does that show up for me? It shows up even like with my team. There's development moments where I say, I need to either give some tough love, right? I either give some tough love or I give flowers, but it's all in pursuit of making sure that I have a team that wherever they go after being at Wocstar, they're their most amazing, fabulous self, and that they can carry on this work. And whatever that may be. We have someone that's going to be leaving and won't be on our team towards the end of the month. I mean, the end of the year. And where she goes next, I want her to be as fabulous and be a Wocstar wherever she goes next, right? Likewise, another course that we're going to be introducing next year is how to invest like a Wocstar. And I'll come back to you when we launch that because I'd love for Tridelts to sign up for it. It'll be free. But I want more of us as women to be investing in other women.
Yeah.
And we can do that now without even dollars, right? Like where we get our thank you gifts from. Every time we have to send out flowers, my team knows exactly what I tell them. Go find a woman-owned florist. I love 1-800-Flowers. Don't get me wrong if you're listening, anyone at 1-800-Flowers, but go find a female-owned florist. If we need new stationery, if we need legal services, if we need accounting services.
Yeah.
We have a retreat that we're going to use a Tridelt for. So now my new thing is use Tridelt women, source and invest by taking our purchasing dollars and directing them to women-owned businesses and women-led companies. Or
I
they
don't,
don't even have to be women-led, right? Like there could be that amazing lawyer at a big law firm. And if we can give her some business and it helps her with her next
yeah.
promotion, like, let's do it. Let's do it.
And who else? Yeah. And who else is championing women? I think we forget as women how much purchasing power and monetary impact we have on the world. I think we just take it for granted. We're going about our daily lives, we're busy, but the more intentional we can be, we have such great power
Absolutely.
collectively, to impact, to drive, to move the needle, to change things. Um,
Absolutely.
our voices and our pocketbooks are very important.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. We have to be intentional. And listen, it it's just another layer of all the other things we have to do each day, right? But
Yep. Yep.
it
One more.
it starts to get easy after a while. I promise you. If you're listening, I promise you it gets easier, right? Now all of a sudden you've got a list of like, you know, you know, florists across the country. Now you've got legal services, you've got a bookkeeper. That bookkeeper probably knows someone who's a graphic designer. Your graphic designer knows someone who can, do XYZ. Like it just blossoms and it gets
Yeah.
easier. But we do have to start with that intentionality for sure.
So you have so much going on, and I think there's so many great things going on. I'm sure there are difficult days too. How do you stay driven? How do you stay focused and driven when it gets harder, when there is a no at the other end, and how do you keep on going on?
Yeah, great question. I'm practicing to say no more. And someone said to me once that no is a full sentence, that you can say no and just put a period at the end of it. And that grammatically, that is a full sentence. And that stayed with me because I was always trying to qualify it, or I was trying to apologize for it, or I was trying to like think of another way how I could be helpful or how I could do what I was being asked, but trying to say no. So one is in hard days, I remind myself that I can say no to things. Like when I get overwhelmed or I get too much on my plate, I can say no. Also on those hard days when I get a lot of no's, I remind myself that it is just a word. And I remember something my mom said to me when I was a kid, and she would say it all the time, was no one ever died from the word no. No one ever died from the word no, Gayla. And she'd make me go and get the paper and go through the obituaries and see if anyone died from the word no. Now, I couldn't really read, so she was also using it as a way to make me learn to
Read.
read.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'd be like, and da da da, she'd be bequeathed.
Yeah.
Internment, right? She would help me with all these big obituary words. But here's
Smart mom.
smart mom. Side note, what's one of the things I love now as an adult? The in memoriam during the Oscars. It's my favorite part. What's another thing I love? The New York Times obituary. Fascinating. Fascinating. You're like, oh my God, the guy that invented the widgety woo, he just died the other day. Oh my God. Like, I never knew who invented the widgety woo. Now I know because I was reading the New York Times obituaries. But okay, I'm off track. So one is I just remind myself that no is a full sentence and to use it myself to not allow myself to get overwhelmed. And then I remind myself that no one died from the word no. And then the other two things I'll say is that I always try to go back to my why. And for me, it's women entrepreneurs. And so on those difficult days, listen, there might be some wine, there might be some, spa appointments thrown in, there might be some tears, whatever, however I'm responding to that day. I always try to just take some time to think of the why and the women for me. And then it's not taking myself too seriously. Like those walks and those moments to just breathe in and out. Like I just have to remember, like, there's some big shit out there, big hairy stuff out there. Like it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And give
So what,
myself grace. Like,
yeah, well, that's hugely important. Grace to have the day where you have to figure out how to keep going.
yeah.
Uh, so I know there's some cool stuff coming. What is next for you?
Oh gosh. So we're still investing. We're actively investing. So if you're a startup and you're looking for capital and you're in the tech space or you're a tech-enabled company, we are still investing. So come introduce yourself to us. We'd love to hear from you. So we're still actively investing. We have started another cohort of the academy. I love these women and men, some really cool businesses that are part of the academy. And then what I'm also really excited about is Wocstar Media. This has been in my heart for a very long time. I think it started when I used to go to school in Asia and I was in Vietnam. And I was in this very remote part of Vietnam, this remote village, and someone started asking, I was in conversation, they started asking me questions, and I was like, oh my gosh, they are just assuming that like I'm being raised by like a single mom who's on crack and my parents in and out of jail and I mean they didn't say exactly like that, right?
Yeah,
It was kind of nuanced.
right.
It's like, oh my gosh. And then as I got to know them better, and I could get to a place where I could be like, remember when you said and da da da, like, where the hell is that coming from? And part of what we kind of figured out is just like that was what they knew of Black people. New Jack
Right.
City, Boys in the Hood, every Law and Order
Yeah.
episode,
That was their experience,
all
period.
that Black exploitation, Foxy Brown, like that's what
Yeah.
they said. I thought, oh my gosh, isms, so many isms are mobile because of media. Media gives isms feet to travel.
Yeah.
And so I thought, wow, if we also think about storytelling, it's so um, foundational to who we are in our cultures, right? Whether it be the Hispanic culture, Southeast Asian culture, German culture, whatever the culture is, Irish culture, like storytelling, oral history is so powerful, a medium of how we connect as humans, that I thought, I wonder if we could eliminate isms and hate and divisiveness if we told stories in a way that allowed us to connect as humans. What would that look like? And maybe if we did that, if we changed the story, right? If we changed the narrative, if we changed the stories that were being told, maybe we could change capital flows. Maybe we could change how we look and invest in women.
Yeah.
And maybe we could change the world. And so I did little things. I have invested and supported a number of different films. Don't ask me any of them. Um, um, they're probably on they're on IMDb and stuff. And then I started doing plays because I wanted to see like live storytelling. I thought that was really interesting. So all this had been in my heart, and in little ways I was supporting it. And then I thought, right, that bigger, go big or go home. I was like, we've got to start Wocstar Media. We've got to start supporting different authors and playwrights and get films and television shows out there, start supporting books. So we're going to have a book party, a book club. The Wocstar Book Club will be coming out next year. We've signed a bunch of authors and optioned their books. And so we'll be taking those to various studios and streamers to hopefully get to screens and theaters. And we're working even with artists uh, in terms of like painting and graphic design. So you'll see some art as well that we'll be supporting in galleries and such. So
I
that's the
love
latest and greatest.
Yeah, I love that you've brought this full circle. Like there's the money and there's changing that and getting the businesses going, but really looking at what else influences and how can we bring this full circle? And you'll probably happen upon something else at some point in time, probably step into that because now I know you. Um, but I love how
You
you're
ask me, I will always say yes. I find it very hard to say no to you, Mindy. So yes, if you ask to
I just
step into
love how
something
you
else,
like
I'm sure I will.
I just love how you like, oh, there's another place where it's not working. We can change society. Let's just step
Yeah.
in there and
Yeah.
do
Well,
that.
and listen, yeah, don't get me wrong. My counterparts, the bros, right, that are venture capitalists, many of them get to just get up and be venture capitalists, right? They get to look at a bunch of companies all day and then they can write some checks, right? And I don't want to simplify what they do. There's great guys out there. But I don't get me wrong, I would love just to get up every day and just look at companies, hang out with entrepreneurs and write checks. But again, as women, when we see problems, we can't turn away. We we try to solve them,
Yeah.
right? And so that's really what's happening is that in the work that I'm doing, when I see a problem, and to the extent I think I and a team that I can pull together can help be a part of a solution, then I'll always step into that role. And I think that's true for, for women and for this sisterhood, the women I've met in the sisterhood, that's true for. So that's not unique to me.
Um,
It's exhausting, don't get me wrong. It can be exhausting on
right.
days. That's why I'm
Tired, but
these
you
dark
gotta,
circles under my eyes, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, right?
well, we wouldn't
I'll
trade
turn
you.
this body in cold, tired, and ragged when I get done with it.
Oh, I love how you're living out our values as Tri Delta and doing it in your own special, unique way. So
Values with some spice and a few naughty words. Yeah.
with a hat on, values with a hat on.
And
How I know there are now we've got everybody excited out there. How can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
yeah, so LinkedIn is a great one, and I'll make sure we give everyone the handle. So LinkedIn is a great one. My email, happy to give, Gayla@wocstar.com. Happy to give that. But here's the thing. I'm not afraid to give out my email because you know what? Most people don't use it. Most people won't use it. So I remember being on stage once and someone said, "Oh," and I gave out my email on stage. There's a room of like 500 people. And when I got off stage, the coordinator said, "Oh my gosh, like no one ever gives their email out on stage. That was so brave of you." I said, "Not really, because a lot of people don't use it, right? Like, we all write it down. We get, we go to conferences, we run around, we're getting a million
Right.
business cards, but we never follow up, right?" But Gayla@wocstar.com. So anyone who has the chutzpah to follow up, I will respond.
I love
But yeah,
it. We'll put it in the comments for the episode. I love that. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us. This has been a great conversation. I'm sure there are a lot of inspired people out there just to have you in Tri Delta, but also some people who probably were thinking about opening a business or starting a business who are now thinking harder about it. So,
I
um,
would love to meet them.
well, thank you for giving us time today. Thank you for doing everything that you do for Tri Delta. You've been an amazing guest.
Oh my gosh, listen, thank you for your leadership. I am so proud and honored to be a part of this organization. And I love that I'm now in a position to truly serve and hopefully contribute and add some meaningful things to the organization. But wow, I am just so proud of this sisterhood. I'm so proud of the organization. And for those that are listening who aren't involved, it's really pretty impressive. Like I am blown away every time by the professionalism, the operations, the outcomes and the goals that you guys achieve. Like, listen, I look at hundreds of companies a week. Your company is well run. I would invest in it tomorrow. I am invested in it, right? Like my time, my pocketbook, like I'm invested. This is a good investment. It's a smart investment and it's an amazing company to invest in. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Gayla. Aren't we lucky to have her? Just I'm so thrilled that she joined us today and was here to be a part of TriDelta. It's interesting. Gayla is a volunteer. And so if you have ever thought about volunteering for TriDelta, as she said, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience. There are lots of different positions available in TriDelta. And so if you're interested at all, want to bring your skills and expertise to bear for the organization, all you have to do is go to tridelta.org. And at the top of that webpage, there is a button that says volunteer. Click on that and we will get you plugged in. You will be glad that you did. We hope you'll like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We have 3 stars in our crescent, but we love those 5-star ratings. Thanks for joining us today. And until next time, Delta Love.